Hi everybody, welcome back to Brelsford Family Homestead. I'm Darcy. Today we're going to harvest some beans and can them. So I wanted to bring you along. This is a 4x8 bed, and this is going to be the first time I'm harvesting from this bed. And there's a lot in different sizes, so hopefully we can get a good amount. Let's see what we got. Do you guys ever eat green beans fresh from the garden? I did yesterday for the first time. It's really good. I'm all done harvesting. I've got a decent amount in here. We'll definitely have enough to can, probably not a whole can or full. But if I didn't say, this is the first time I've picked from this bed. So they will be putting on a lot more beans, and we'll get more as the season continues. And I do have a couple other plants that I picked some from. Some of them are quite large though, so they're not really, I'll have to make sure that they're canning quality. I might just have to eat them fresh. But these are Blue Lake bush beans. So let's go inside and see what we got. All right, let's open the apron. See what we got. Nice. This is what we got. I'm gonna go ahead and get these snapped, and I'll probably can these in the morning with you after church because it's getting later in the evening, but we'll see. So let me show you how to snap these just in case you haven't. So you're gonna just, some people leave that tip on, I never do. You snip that off, and then this is the end that was connected to the plant. You snap that off, and then into bite-sized pieces, something like that. And I'll have a separate bowl. Now this one here, I will not can that. You see how, one, it's a little bit dried out, but see all the bumps? The beans are very mature in there, so those are not gonna be desirable for canning these for green beans. If you guys saw my post in the community tab, if not, I'll post a picture here or go and look at it. I made this apron and it's growing on me. I was a little kind of disappointed because it's like a lot bigger than I expected it to be. It's kind of wide here. I would like thinner straps, and I've had this fabric in this pattern for years. But anyway, it's growing on me. I definitely like the print. What do you think? We are ready to get canning. I wanted to show you all that I'll be using just in case this is your first time, but I want to promise you it is much easier than what you would think. I was really intimidated to do pressure canning for a long time. I just did water bath, and pressure canning really is not as difficult as it seems. So one of the books I use the most is this one. It has all kinds of recipes that are safe for canning, both water bath and pressure canning, and also the website, the National Center for Home Food Preservation. They also have recipes and instructions there, and you can access that for free if you don't have this book, but this book is linked below. So I don't have a lot of beans, but I'm going to can what I have just because I'm attempting to can all that we'll need for the year without buying. I'm growing them in my garden, even though I have limited space. So we'll see, I'll can what I have. I have one of my pressure canners here. This is a Miro. And so you're gonna have to look at whatever pressure canner you have and see how much water to add to it. Some of the I have a couple of canners. Some of them will say, you know, 3 quarts of water, no matter how many jars you have in it. This one will say 2 quarts if it's full, and it'll show you what they consider full, and then 2.5 quarts if it's not full. So read your instruction manual for that, and then you'll need to know your elevation to know what, how many pounds of pressure to use. And I would recommend Googling your particular property location to know for sure, because for me, my property is a different elevation than the town that I am considered part of, and so the pressure is different. So we have my beans are all snapped and they're washed, and I have some jars and hot water in my sink. You do need to keep your jars hot, so there's a few ways you can do that. With water bath, I just put it in the canner because it's full of hot water and it keeps them warm. You no longer need to sterilize your jars if you're cooking things for more than 10 minutes, and that doesn't apply for pressure canning anyway. So I have hot water in my sink. If I'm doing a lot of canning, I have one of those really big electric roasters, and I put my jars in there, and that keeps them hot. So there's not very, you know, if only 2.5 quarts of water in here, it's not enough to really keep my jars hot. So, and I don't have this boiling yet. So then we need some washed rings here, and I washed my lids, but I don't see where I put them. Oh, they're on the towel behind the green beads. So I've got some lids here and they're freshly washed. Read the instructions on your lids. Most of them you do not have to boil anymore. You used to have to boil them first. Most of them you don't anymore, but check the instructions on whatever brand lids that you have. I have a jar lifter. They have a few different styles of these. These are just ones that came in a kit from like Ball or something. You'll need something to measure your head space. Typically you can buy these two things together. Something to debubble. You can use this to debubble, but I like to use like a chopstick or something like that. And then I also have some type of spoon to help me to remove some of the food or water to adjust head space. And then for this, you do need salt. So you'll need salt and whatever measuring spoon you need for that. And well, your jars, I already said that. Anything else? Let's get canning. When I was showing you all the things I used, did I show you my funnel? I'm not sure if I did. I have several different ones. This is my favorite one because it's metal. I have some plastic ones that came with the kit with the jar lifter, but it just makes filling the jars a lot easier. So one of these is great, and it works on both wide mouth and regular mouth canning jars. There is one more thing, boiling water. I like to use this when I'm doing a lot of canning, but because I'm only doing a few jars, I have an electric kettle here, and I'm going to use that because it'll be more than enough water. It's typically enough for a canner load anyway, but I like this for when I'm doing a lot of canning, or if I'm canning broth, I heat it up in this because it holds more than 7 quarts. Love this thing. While that water is heating up, I do want to say that if you're following safe canning practices, you are doing 1 jar at a time. You're not laying all of your jars out, filling them and then putting them in the canner. That's considered called staging. A lot of people do it, but if you're going to go by the book, that is not the proper way to do it. And you know, one of the big reasons why is because if you're doing something hot, you could have thermal shock. So if you have your jars warm to put in, you know, boiling water, and you take all 7 out at one time, that last jar is not going to be hot anymore. Maybe some of the others too, and then you could have breakage. You could hurt yourself. It's going to break in the canner, and then you've lost all of that food. So we'll take 1 jar at a time out of the warm water, pack it full of food, pull it and put the boiling water in, debubble and all of that, put the lid on, put it in the canner, then do the next one. It's really not any more difficult than trying to do them all at once, especially if you have your area set up well so that you're not having to, you know, go here, go there, you know, have all your stuff as close as possible, get it all together first before you get started. So I'll give that a little bit longer, and then I'll bring you down to show you how we pack the jars. Okay, we've got a quart jar here. For quart jars, we do need 1 teaspoon, this is a half a teaspoon, of salt. And then we're going to pack the jar with a 1 inch head space. And then we're going to fill it with the hot water. I already measured out how many green beans that I have, so I knew exactly how many jars I needed. When I'm doing more, I have a bowl that I know is a whole canner full, so when you do it more, you have dishes you'll use all the time. So that is pretty good there with beans. I'll put some more in the sides here. My family loves green beans. Sometimes I have to open a quart and a pint to feed them. Okay. All right, now we're going to get the water. We'll fill it up to what looks like a 1 inch head space, but we are going to debubble it, so we may need to add some more water. Okay. And debubbling is just, you know, moving any of those air pockets. So you just kind of go down through the middle and around the sides to get that out of there. We'll check it again, and that's good. Then you'll need a washcloth or a paper towel moistened with some vinegar to clean off that lid. the rim, I should say. Then we're gonna put a lid on, followed by a ring. I like to keep a washcloth handy because these jars can get pretty hot. It's fingertip tight, and then we're gonna put this in the canner and move to the next one. And as I grab this next one, I am going to show you that you should check your jars over before you get started. Look for cracks, look on the rim, even run your finger on there and make sure there's no chips, and that will help avoid breakage in the canner and loss of food. I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of these filled, and then I'll show you what the next step is. All right, we're ready to put the lid on the canner. Make sure your rubber ring is in position correctly. Sometimes you need to replace these things, so just keep an eye on it, that's intact. And the canner lid, typically it has an arrow, see right there? And there's an arrow on the pot itself so that you can line them up to open and close. So I have that twisted close. I'm going to turn the canner on, and it's going to heat up, and it's going to start venting steam out of this thing on the top, and we're going to let that vent for 10 minutes, and then we're going to put the weight on. Your canner might be a little bit different. You may have a gauge on yours, so that will be a little bit different for you. You'll still vent it though before putting something over the vent. But mine just has a weighted thing, no actual gauge. So after that, after it's vented for 10 minutes, we'll put the weight on. I'll show you that. After the weight starts rocking, we will set the timer, and these will process for 25 minutes. The canner is boiling and venting, so I'm going to go ahead and set the timer for 10 minutes. It's almost time to put the weight on. Most of the weights will just sit straight onto there. This one, you actually have to screw it on a little bit. So be careful if yours is that way. It's harder to take it off without burning myself than putting it on. All right, and now I'll just wait for that to start rocking, and I'll bring you back when it does. The weight has started to rock, so I'm going to set my timer for 25 minutes. Different canners will sound different. I have some that make a really loud jiggling noise, but you will see the weight start to rock back and forth, and that is when you start your timer. Wanted to give you a close-up of this one as it's jiggling. I am going to reduce the heat a little bit. You don't want it to be rocking super fast the entire time, but you do want it to be rocking back and forth. The time is up, and I've turned the heat off on the canner, but we also need to remove it from the heat. This is a flat top, so I don't want to just slide it across. So I'm going to very carefully move it over to a trivet on the counter, and it will sit there. I've used this stove while this was processing, so some of the other burners are hot too. So you want to do this extremely carefully and move it as little as possible. Now this is going to sit here until the pressure has come completely down. You'll be able to tell if you have a gauge because it will read 0, but typically I set a timer for an hour and check it out, and then you have to practice patience here because you do not want to open this too fast. You want the pressure completely down, and then we will remove the weight and let it sit for a few minutes. Then we'll twist the lid so that it's unlocked and let it sit, and then we will gently take the lid off, let it sit for a moment, and then we will remove the jars and let them sit for 12 to 24 hours before we clean them off, remove the rings, label them, and put them in the pantry. So you don't want to do this too fast because you want this to seal properly and you want your food to be shelf stable. So practice patience, let it sit there. I will say you want to put this canner somewhere where you're not going to accidentally touch it or your children, because it holds heat and it will be very hot, and if you touch it in some way, it will burn you. So, I mean, I guess that seems to be obvious, but I was shocked at how long that these stay hot after you've taken them off the heat. So just be careful. It's time to take the weight off. I set a timer for an hour. but I was busy editing another video for you, so it's been plenty of time. So it's a little bit cumbersome for me to take this one off because you have to like lift up and unscrew. So if you can avoid getting one like this, do. The other ones you just lift up and it's off. Okay, it's off. Now I'm gonna let this sit here for a few more minutes before we twist the lid to be open a little bit. Let that sit, and then we'll take the jars out. Okay, now it's time to turn it. So that is loose, but I'm going to just leave it like that for about 5 minutes and we'll come back again. Okay, it's been 5 minutes. We're just gonna carefully take this off. This isn't a full canner load, but it's what I had. It is pretty easy to can this. So I'm gonna let this sit here for a minute and then we're gonna take them off. I'll set them on a towel on a little cutting board off to the side and let them sit for 12 to 24 hours. Then I'll make sure that they sealed. I'll remove the rings, wash them off, and put a label on them. Okay, I've got a cloth here on a cutting board and I'm going to put our jars on there. See, those are nice. Typically, when I am canning green beans, I'm canning several bushels at a time. In the years past, I've bought 2 and even 3 bushels at one time to can. So I'm doing multiple cannerfuls every day for, sometimes 2 or 3 days. This, I only had 2.5 quarts, but that was the first flush from the bed that is out there now. I'm hoping to can all of the green beans that my family will eat this year from my garden. We'll see if we make it. If we run out, we run out. I do still have some left over from last year, but I did also want to share this process with you. Maybe if you're just interested in pressure canning or you're wanting to know how to can green beans, this is how you do it. I feel like it is one of the very simple canning projects to do with the pressure canner, and it's actually the first thing I ever pressure canned was green beans, and it happens to be one of my favorite vegetables. So I'm back. I was checking my jars to make sure that they were sealed properly, and I thought I better share that with you just in case this is going to be your first time canning or you're new to canning. So when it's set for 12 to 24 hours, you're going to take that ring off. You're going to check, make sure that that lid is on good and tight, that that button is no longer there, you can't push it. And if for some reason it did not seal, that button didn't go down, you can pull the lid off, then put it in the fridge and incorporate it into your meals that week. You can reprocess it, but I never do that because it's usually the texture would be totally off to process it again. So every once in a while I have a seal failure, so it just goes in the fridge and gets incorporated into my meals that week. So then you wash this off good. I have got stickers that I use because I have a label maker, but you could use a Sharpie or something, but I encourage you to clearly label all of your jars with the date or at least the year and what is in it. Not only for your own sake, because maybe you have a couple different flavors and you want to know for sure which one it is, but also I'm assuming you have other people in your household who are perfectly capable of cooking too, and then they will know what's in there and can utilize the food that you're filling in with your pantries. I appreciate you coming along. I hope this has helped you and encouraged you to give pressure canning a try. Until next time, God bless.